Almost every signpost in Berlin will tell you the same thing, that many in Europe's biggest economy want a drastic change of direction. Political infighting within Germany's three-way coalition government led to a snap election in February.
The news of the collapse of the ruling coalition plunging Berlin into a political crisis.
And after years of frustration, an anxious electorate was more divided than ever about who should take over.
Many people in Germany don't feel that the political establishment is listening to them and can really service their needs.
Over the past 60 or so years, the number of parties battling for seats in the Bundestag, Germany's parliament, has more than doubled. Before reunification with the East, 3 West German parties regularly secured more than 90% of votes. But in 2025, 7 jostled for power. And these increasingly popular newcomers have polarizing visions of 21st century Germany.
I don't think the global dimension of Germany's political fragmentation can be underestimated. We're talking about one of the largest economies in the world.
This election is probably one of the most important in the post-war period. If the center doesn't hold within 4 years, it's very possible to see a far-right government leading Germany.
With Europe and the world grappling with Germany's version of resurgent nationalism and its more extreme elements, the question is, can its political establishment hold on? For decades, Germany meant heavy industry, exports, mining, a rock-solid bond market, and reliable, steady growth.
The idea of post-war Germany was built to a large extent around economic well-being and prosperity. That prosperity promise has failed and disintegrated.
Since 1950, Germany's economic story has been one of year-on-year growth, or it mostly has if we ignore COVID, the financial crisis, and some one-time blips. Only twice in this period has Germany's economy contracted during consecutive years, once between 2003 and 4, and just now. And while these yellow bars show a tiny bit of forecasted growth, even that's already been revised down. And since the financial crisis, Germany's had strict limits on how much additional borrowing the federal government can take on, equal to 0.35% of GDP. Or put another way, the smaller the economy, the less new debt available to put towards stimulating it.
Bridges are collapsing, the roads are in an awful state, the trains are constantly late, all of that needs investment. And Germany can't invest anything without cutting things somewhere else.
So we have to work against red tape, against bureaucracy, planning restrictions that make it too difficult to invest and things like that.
A majority of Germans say they want the so-called debt brake loosened or scrapped. Economists think major change is unlikely in the near term, but the country's relatively low national debt gives it some flexibility if necessity overtakes preference.
There's a real sense that this traditional German economic model of buying cheap raw materials, making expensive manufactured goods, and then selling them to the rest of the world doesn't work anymore. Germany is being rivaled by China in that sector, and it's possibly a fight that it can't really win.
On top of that, 1 in 5 Germans are either living in poverty or threatened with it. It's objectively a wealthy country, but German society is more unequal than many people realise. This fuelled insecurity in the wake of an energy crisis Germany was uniquely exposed to.
Germany, before the war in Ukraine, was very much dependent on Russia. Russia was the source of more than 50% of its natural gas, which was used to heat houses and power industrial assembly plants.
The rest came mostly from Norway and the Netherlands. And alternative sources just weren't ready. Previous administrations decommissioned nuclear plants as part of a green energy push, but before robust renewable capacity existed.
By doubling down on cheap Russian gas, it exposed Germany to Russian influence.
So when pipeline gas deliveries were cut off, energy prices in Europe surged. This was bad for households, but for Germany's energy-hungry heavy industry, it accelerated a pre-existing decline. That left another chunk of the electorate furious.
When other economies in the 1990s and early 2000s started looking at other sectors like services or financial services, the German economy kind of doubled down on its old industrial model.
This is Düren. It was once a thriving industrial town. Now it's at the nexus of Germany's structural problems.
It's embedded in Germany's energy system. The nearby lignite mine Hambach is like the largest open pit mine in Germany. It was the source of domestic energy. That domestic energy fueled local industry. In Düren's case, it was paper mills.
People worry about job security, about what their children are going to do, and for the first time, maybe since the end of the Second World War, it feels like the future generations aren't going to live a better life than their parents or their grandparents did.
And so all of that, contributes to anxiety that has fueled the rise of the far right.
Yvonne Müller, who runs this boxing gym in Düren with her husband Ernst Müller, worries about a drift towards ethnic nationalism.
Trainiert der russische mit dem ukrainischen Boxer, hier trainiert der türkische Boxer mit dem kurdischen Boxer. Also ich finde, dass die Behörden oder überhaupt die Regierung viel zu wenig für die Integration in den ganzen Jahren gemacht hat. Ich würde mir wünschen, dass der Wandel käme.
Which brings us to the most contentious issue driving many Germans: immigration.
There are 500,000 within the last 4 years who came to Germany without any control. This has to be stopped immediately.
The migration crisis has added to a sense of anxiety, a sense of people losing their space, losing control of their country, and has been politicized, obviously, by the far right.
The AfD first emerged in 2013 when it was quite a small group of sort of economic libertarians. It wasn't first and foremost an anti-immigration party or particularly far right. What changed that was when in 2015 Angela Merkel opened the German borders during the refugee crisis and allowed over 1 million people into the country within a very short time.
Which you can see in this red line. As net migration to Germany grew between 2013 and 2023, correlating support for the AfD did too.
It's sort of like a make Germany great again. You've seen in their messaging.
We are a libertarian conservative party in Germany. I actually put my thumbs up for Donald Trump. We have huge hope in his presidency, and I really hope that he puts an end on this terrible war in the Ukraine, because the European member states are actually not willing or capable of doing something like that.
Over time, as people became more disgruntled, particularly as they saw some of the impacts of green policies on the German industry, they turned to the only party that they saw as kind of drastic opposition to the status quo, and that was the AfD.
The problem is the mainstream has like a very diffuse idea of Germany. It's sort of a continuation of the status quo that Germany has seen for the last 70, 80 years, and the problem with that for a lot of Germans is that hasn't been working for them.
If Germany's fragmentation continues, looking forward perhaps 5 or 10 years, we will see a scenario where it becomes more and more difficult to actually run the country and form coalitions.
The next government will likely implement reforms aimed at avoiding such an outcome. And Germany's historic fiscal prudence could give it access to a significant monetary lifeline, on paper at least. But in the end, and despite Germany's deep internal divisions, it may be outside events that force the centre to hold.